Hello and welcome to another edition of Currently in Quincy. I'm Joe Catalano, and on today's program we'll chat with Brian Hickox and Yuichi Utagawa from the Quincy Symphony Orchestra. First though, we'll check out weather and news for you. Currently in Quincy, cloudy out there, 66 degrees. The clouds will bring rain this afternoon. It'll be mild, highs about 70 degrees. The rain will be heavy and steady, mostly during the overnight hours. It'll be chilly tonight, lows in the upper 40s. Kind of a 50-50 weekend coming up. Tomorrow will start out kind of wet with some showers in the morning, clearing later in the day. Cool, highs only in the upper 50s. A real fall day on Sunday with sun and clouds, highs in the low 60s, and clouds return here on Monday with a high about 64 degrees. In the news today, Quincy Mayor Thomas Koch is asking the City Council to approve $5 million for the purchase of the former Beachcomber nightclub and a piece of land on Harriet Avenue near the President's Golf Course to prevent future development at both locations. The mayor wants to use money from the Community Preservation account to purchase both properties and maintain them as open space. The Community Preservation Committee approved both purchases this week. Mayor says the city would tear down the former Beachcomber on Quincy Shore Drive and create a passive park setting and maintain the Harriet Avenue property as open space abutting marshland. He says plans for developments at both of those locations are just too large for the areas. Money from the Community Preservation account can be used for the purchase of open space, along with historical preservation, recreation, or affordable housing. Quincy City Council is considering a plan to sell the two remaining undeveloped lots at the former Hancock parking lot across from the courthouse to a developer. The mayor wants to sell those lots to LBC developers for construction of up to 400 new residential units. LBC would pay the city $4.8 million for the properties at the corner of Revere Road and Dennis Ryan Parkway and Revere Road and Mechanic Street. LBC is that same company that developed the nearby Nova Residences apartment building. Quincy City Council wants a better understanding of how the administration plans to pay for large purchases over the next 5 years. During a recent meeting, Ward 4 Councilor Brian Palmucci asked that a detailed report be compiled of future purchases to help the City Council determine spending priorities going forward.
It would be helpful, rather than a list of things that would be nice to have, a list of things that we need, as well as a list of things that would be nice to have over the next 5 years, with the price tag on it, as well as recommendations either in favor or against those particular items within this 5-year time frame. I mean, we know that fire engines have a lifespan. Right? We know how much they cost. We know the year that we've purchased each fire piece of apparatus. There should be a spreadsheet that says roughly when, within a 5-year period, when we're going to need to replace a particular piece of equipment.
Now, Palmucci's request came after the administration sought an additional $14 million to create a special education center on Old Colony Avenue, which the City Council ultimately approved. Early voting begins in Quincy this weekend. Voters may cast ballots in the gym at North Quincy High School this weekend and next weekend from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Voters are asked to use the Hunt Street entrance to the school. City Clerk Nicole Crispo explains that early voting will also take place weekdays at City Hall.
As you know, 2 weeks of early voting starting October 17th and going right through October 30th. On the weekends, it'll be 9 to 4 at North Quincy High Gymnasium. So please use the Hunt Street entrance. It's a big, open, wide space we're taking advantage of, and very safe for people to come in. There's PPE there, and then Monday through Friday, we'll be here at City Hall in the Great Hall. Again, same thing, 8:30 to 4:30. PPE available, and we're cleaning our stations as people come in and vote. So I feel like it's safe, and and if you wanted to vote in person.
Absentee ballots may also be cast up until November 2nd at noon at City Hall. Mail-in ballots can be placed in a drop box outside of City Hall. Mail-in ballots must be postmarked by November 3rd. The deadline to register to vote in the November 3rd election is October 24th. Coming up, we'll check in with Brian Hickox and Yuichi Utagawa from the Quincy Symphony Orchestra. That's next. Okay, we're checking in with Brian Hickox and Yuichi Utagawa of the Quincy Symphony Orchestra to find out what they are doing and not doing during this pandemic. So, Brian, Yuichi, so great to see you guys.
Great to see you.
I wanted just to let folks here in Quincy know that, yes, the Quincy Symphony Orchestra is still in existence, and yes, they miss everybody terribly. But, Brian, how has the symphony been dealing through this time?
Well, it's an interesting question, but I think most of us have had that same evolution, that initially into March of this past year, it was a fear, it was panic. We didn't know what to do. We were frozen, so to speak, paralyzed, if you will, of not understanding whether this was going to be days, weeks, months, years. As the time's gone along, we've canceled or postponed concerts and not knowing whether the next one should be postponed or canceled. And so it was a little bit of lack of knowledge because no one knew precisely what was going to happen. So we've just tried to be as nimble as possible, not only with regard to scheduling the concerts, but availability of the school, performance facilities, and then the schedules of musicians as well, including some guest musicians. So it's morphed into a little bit of a resignation over the past several months that live performances just can't happen, not only for the safety of our audiences, but for the safety of our musicians as well.
Yeah. Have you been able to do anything at all, even as maybe small quartets, if you will, or something of that nature?
Well, it's interesting. Within our orchestra, we have some physicians in the medical field who have been giving us their most recently acquired information about what might be safe and not. And it seems like string music may be the next step for us rather than the wind instrument, so to speak, with the virus. So that's our next step. And, certainly QATV has been a great offering a lending hand to see how your technology might be able to assist us in delivering some music.
Yeah, I know I've seen several cases where even school chorus groups have gotten together virtually, through these types of formats and been able to orchestrate some kind of a performance using virtual technology. Is that something that you've looked into at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done some experimentation. And what we've found is, depending upon the different internet speeds of broadcast and recipient for various musicians in different locations, the response of the music and then the delivery of that music sometimes will have a lag. And so it's difficult to coordinate an ensemble. So a solo performer, that can work. However, when it comes to the coordination, the technology really needs to step up, and we'll look to do some fundraising to add to our technology suite.
Yeah, I could understand that for sure. When you're dealing with orchestrating a symphony, Yuichi, I'm sure you could attest is much different than a choral group being put together to sing a song.
No, and I mean, Brian is exactly right. When you think about the technology to like what we're doing right now, where we're meeting, having an interview over the internet, it's remarkable how much that has progressed, right? But occasionally there may be a slight split-second delay in when I talk, when you hear and stuff like that. And it's not a huge big deal when you're having a conversation, but when you're trying to make music, when it's literally split-second timing, it just doesn't work. So some of the things that you might see on the internet where people are, orchestras are playing, what they're doing is every musician is playing to a click track. And then they have something in their ears generally, and it's giving them a speed, all right? And so everyone records to that click track, and then somebody gets all those video files together after the fact and puts them together, but it can't happen in real time. So, and we don't have the equipment and technology to know how to do that. So, but maybe you guys can help us.
Well, that's interesting to know, because that makes sense now that there's a lot of work that goes into those things that we've seen, where you have 100 people on the screen from the Boston Pops or something doing a.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. They're all listening to a click track, or they may even actually be listening to an actual recording and playing along with it.
Okay.
And then they take that recording out, or the click track out, and then they put all those files together.
Gotcha.
But that can't be done in real time, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's hours of work. That's hours of labor that's gone into that.
Absolutely. Never mind all the hours of practice that each of the musicians have been putting in to play those parts too. Sure. And when they're doing it that way, they're even more exposed than when they're actually playing an orchestra.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're playing by themselves and recording everything gets heard.
Yeah.
So.
Well, as musicians, it must be tough for both of you, because that is the heart and soul of live performance, right? Is being in front of an audience and doing your art, crafting your work. So you must really miss that.
It's terrible, and it's the interaction between, it's one thing to practice at home, which I have been doing. I've been practicing a lot of violin, but which I've enjoyed. But the thing that makes music making great is to be able to do it with other people, and that I think everybody who loves doing that, and I miss it terribly. It's just. Because there's just no interaction when you're playing by yourself, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things we see with live music performance, it's not the same every time. There's different nuances and creativity that occurs and expression, and that's what makes live music performance just so treasured. I hear from so many friends and neighbors here in Quincy, and they not only miss the music, but they're missing the interaction of the people as well. So it's been intentional for us to get on stage as soon as we possibly can to bridge this period of time, to get back to the passion that's not only of the musicians, but of our audiences and our friends and neighbors here.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point, Brian. We should let folks know that although the second step of Phase 3 opening here in Massachusetts does allow for some indoor performances here in the city of Quincy, that is still not the case.
Yeah, it's true. And, the term seems ubiquitous, out of an abundance of caution.
Yeah.
And, it's right now not worth the risk.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And what Brian was saying, about string players are just breathing normally, right, when they play. But wind players, their air is going through their instruments, and with flute player, for example, they're blowing air very slowly directly away from themselves, right? So with what the current understanding of COVID, how it's spread, it's just impossible to get together. It's too risky. So, and we have a wide range of ages in our orchestra too, from the very young to senior citizens too. So like Brian says, we'd love to get together, but I don't think it's possible to do that safely right now.
Sure. Yeah. Have you thought about, though, and I'm not going to ask you, when, because nobody knows, that wouldn't be fair. But have you thought about what your first, post-pandemic concert would be?
Anything would be great.
Mary Had a Little Lamb, perhaps.
We'd be happy to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Right. Yeah.
Just the chance to get together and make music together and share it with other people. Start off with the Star Spangled Banner, and just it doesn't matter what it is.
It's interesting. I hear from some of the musicians in the orchestra. We chat on a regular basis and understand that they're craving to get back as soon as possible, of course, as we've discussed. But, some of the challenges right now of being a parent, being a mom and dad with remote work and remote learning for their kids, they're becoming teachers as much as parents, even more than they had been before. And so, that's yet another challenge that's on the plate of so many young families. So it's, it's not just the logistics of, do we have access to the performance facility? It's not just whether it's safe for the musicians or the patrons. It's availability too of time, given this new normal that we're in.
Sure, yeah, and we should remind folks the Quincy Symphony is an all-volunteer orchestra. These folks have day jobs, if you will, or day lives that they're attending to, in addition to what they would normally be doing with the symphony. So that is just compounded, I'm sure, on top of all the stress and anxiety that folks are going through right now.
Well, even with professional groups, the venerable institution of the Boston Symphony Orchestra has gone through layoffs of musicians and staff, which, with their endowments over a century, one might think that wasn't necessary, but this is just bringing a whole new environment and challenges to fundraising for them. And certainly, for us, we're looking to bridge the gap, as I had mentioned before, between today and when we can next meet and perform, because most of our fundraising is voluntary donations at the door, so to speak, and folks seeing us and saying, we really appreciate this, and here's $25, and we really appreciate that. So the only efforts we can reach out to right now are virtually, and if there's anyone who would like to help us bridge this gap between now and when we can next perform together, they can visit QuincySymphonyOrchestra.org. Make sure it's .org. And right on the front page there's a donate button, and we'd very much appreciate, whether it's $10, $25, or even $100, that would very, very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Yuichi, I know that you work with some other orchestras as well. Are they facing the same situation?
Oh, it's the arts right now, like so many other business. If you want to call it a business, in some sense, it is. It's a nonprofit, but it's suffering terribly. I mean, it's and orchestras all over the world, like Brian mentioned. I mean, the Boston Symphony is one of the great orchestras of the world. It's completely shut down. Broadway is shut down. The ballet is shut down. Theaters, of course, movie theaters, but any kind of live performance venue is shut down all across the United States and across many parts of the world. So, they're even saying, some of the great English orchestras in London are saying, they may not be able to survive this. It's really a kind of a very difficult time for the arts, no question about it.
Yeah, and for folks who make their living doing that, it's even more difficult. There's not a lot of assistance, financial assistance available.
No, it's extremely difficult, and so we're hoping that we can just kind of ride through this and get out the other side and rebuild. But it will be a challenge, and it is a challenging time. But not just for musicians, right? I mean, for restaurant owners, small businesses. I just feel, I have a friend who has a restaurant, and I've been hearing about some of the challenges he's going through, and it's it's amazing how resilient people are at the same time. Yeah. But it's a tough time. There's no question about that.
Curious, Yuichi, are you familiar with how the arts and music dealt with the first pandemic that we're familiar with in 1918?
That's a very good question. I have not done, I haven't looked back into that. I ought to do that. I've been just trying to focus on practicing violin and studying.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, Joe, as I understand, that was the only other time that concerts were canceled for the Boston Symphony Orchestra.
Okay.
I don't believe it was an entire season, but I believe it was a portion of the season.
Sure. And, they didn't have the technology, obviously, that we have today to at least stay connected. So I imagine there was a lot of letter writing going on at that time.
A lost art.
Yeah, exactly. That's for sure. Another art that's lost. Yeah. So, typically coming up, you would have 'Tis the Season for the holiday concert. Then you'd have a break. Then you'd have concerts in February and in the springtime as well. So are you working with schools to at least keep young people engaged in music?
Well, there Yeah, I mean, we would love to, but the thing is, one of the things is that in schools they really want to make sure that it's a space where they can control who goes in and out, right? So it's and the schools have been great to us, and we have a great working relationship with the Quincy Public Schools. But I think that one of the last things they want right now is to have a non-school-related person, directly related to school, come in, and that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
And you see things like, with some of my other groups, we've discussed trying to do chamber music recordings and stuff like that, and trying to find a venue is very difficult. Even churches don't want strangers coming in, understandably, because they want to control their premises. So we're in a particularly strange, I don't know, it's any art or any activity that requires a group of people to get together, which is a lot of things, right? Even your studios probably, right? It's a challenge.
Well, I remember the governor saying at one of his press conferences, COVID-19 hates anything that has to do with joy. Pretty much sums it up. Right? Family gatherings, public celebrations, anything like that.
Weddings, right? Birthday parties.
Yes, exactly.
You can't even get together with your family except for your immediate family. Right. I have parents. My parents live in Texas, and I go down there, especially in the summer, a couple times, and throughout the year for short visits, a weekend. My father's 88 now, and I'd love to see him, but it's too much of a risk, to fly in the airplane, get there. I mean, I'm not so worried about myself, but what if I have it and I give it to my father or something?
Well, that's the insipid part of this whole thing, is right. Yeah, exactly.
But fortunately, we have Zoom or quick FaceTime or something like that. So, but
yeah, absolutely.
It's true, and that's been one of the tools that many of our musicians who are music educators have been able to connect with their students still in the private lesson forum. It's been an opportunity because they don't necessarily absolutely have to synchronize their performance timing. However, the example can be played and then the teacher can coach them through it. So for many of our orchestra members, that music educator part of their life continues on through Zoom.
Sure, yeah. I'd be curious, and I've been thinking about this a lot, as to what types of music will be written or maybe has already been written during this time, and how that will kind of impact the future of music, looking back. I don't know if you've heard, or Brian, if you've heard our composers being impacted, and are they relaying that, through their music that they're writing?
That's funny you should bring that up, because I was just speaking to a good friend of mine who's a composer, conductor, and pianist, and I was, his name is Charles Floyd. He conducts the gospel night at Boston Pops. He's a remarkable musician. We've done a lot of work together, and I was telling him, he wrote a piano concerto several years ago that I premiered somewhere else, and I was talking to him about possibly writing a jazz piano concerto. And he's in the same boat, like so many. He's a freelance musician. He performs everywhere, but everything is shut down right now. So he's, I said, well, right now, while you have time, maybe you should be thinking about a jazz piano concerto. And why don't we just call it the COVID concerto?
Well, let's hope that starts out with a solemn beginning and a joyful ending.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
That's a great point, Brian. Yeah, that's a great point. But I mean, so many times, music does reflect what's going on, I think, either, in society or in culture. So I'd be curious to see, it has yet to be written, quite literally, as the story's not over yet.
Yeah, hopefully we're going to get, by next fall, we'll be able to get back together. But it's very difficult to be able to predict for sure.
Yeah. Anything else like that folks know about right now when it comes to the Quincy Symphony?
Well, just that through the end of 2020, our season's been canceled, and like to say postponed, but unfortunately it's been canceled. Yeah. The thoughts for 2021 are we're ready, we're willing, we're able, but not physically able. So as soon as that can happen, we'll put out the word. And we appreciate everyone who's been so supportive of us emotionally during this period of time, financially during this period of time. It's we've seen the best of a lot of people come through during this challenging time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amen. Yeah. And we are looking forward to coming back strong as soon as we can. And we're itching to do it. And I think that for all of us, when we finally have that opportunity, we have always loved music, but I think we're going to love it even more. And yeah. I mean, that may be a lesson from something like this, right? Sometimes you take certain things for granted. It's important not to do that.
I think everybody's hoping that some good things will come out of this. Absolutely. QuincySymphonyOrchestra.org, right? The main website?
That's correct, and appreciate anyone who can assist us.
Absolutely.
Brian,
thank you.
It's so good to see you guys, and hopefully next time we can do this in person.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Joe.
You're welcome. All right. Be well.
You too.
Thank you.
Special thanks to Brian Hickox and Yoichi Utagawa for joining us today from the Quincy Symphony Orchestra. Thank you to our crew. Thank you for watching. And a reminder, please participate in the Quincy COVID Memories Project by sharing your experiences of life in Quincy during the pandemic. Just go to quincyculturalmemory.com to submit your videos, your photos, other reflections. You can also send them to the Thomas Crane Library, attention local history, 40 Washington Street, Quincy, 02169. And please visit our website, qatv.org, for our latest programs, news and information, classic sports programming, online classes, video on demand, and live streaming. For all of us here at Quincy Access Television, I'm Joe Catalano. Please stay safe.